Here we go.
Next on AM 1480 WLEA, the Newsmaker Show. Here's Brian O'Neill.
With Dr. Robert A. Heineman, political science professor emeritus.
Thank you, Brian.
From Alfred University.
Yes, fine little school.
It is a nice little place.
Yes.
I worked there in the summer of '87.
And we survived.
Well, I was on the paint crew. But we won't get into that. Let's start out with impeachment.
Yes. Well, I believe today the Senate is going to vote on the issue of whether to have any witnesses come before the jury or the proceedings. And that becomes that's one of those very important kind of procedural points here. If McConnell is not able to quash the attempt to bring witnesses, then that would mean that the whole attempt there to try to just simple vote for acquittal would be in trouble. Now, again,
Schumer says the Dems don't have the votes for witnesses.
Has he said that?
Yes.
Yeah, well, McConnell is acting fairly confident as well in that respect. And the point is, I think a number of Democrats now are beginning to move toward putting an end to this whole thing. First, I think we got to make the point on moving beyond the witness thing for a minute. Simply acquitting the president simply takes a majority vote. They quit him, it's all over, we go home. Then the other approach, of course, is try to convict him with a two-thirds vote. Let's see, do I have this right? I think I do. And that would be a vote on removal. And that would take two-thirds, and obviously nobody expects that to come down the road. Oh, obviously, if you can't just acquit him with, you don't get 50% to do that, then I guess you can move on to a vote on actual conviction on impeachment. But clearly the whole approach that McConnell and I'm sure Trump would like to take is simply say, hey, these charges don't have any validity, boom, let's go. So it's going to take 51 votes, and one of the interesting questions is, of course, which I hope we don't come to, is if it turns out to be a tie vote, 50-50, can Robertson cast the deciding vote in that situation? And Roberts being the Chief Justice presiding. So we'll just have to see. But I think basically the dynamics of this whole thing operate toward bringing it all to a close. So I'm sure McConnell is working with quite a number of Republican senators, and at least 3 Democratic senators have suggested that they're not interested in going any farther here. What is the guy's Manchin, is it, or Manchin? From West Virginia, who generally votes for the Republicans anyway, and the fellow Brown from Alabama. And in Brown's case, he's going to have to run for re-election. And why would you give your opponents another arrow to fire at you by not supporting Trump in this situation? Where Trump is, of course, very popular in Alabama. So I'm thinking Jones is probably going to go with the Republicans on this, too. And then there's a senator, woman from Arizona, who seems to be leaning toward putting an end to this. But the whole idea is, first and foremost, I think, is that, Klobuchar, Bernie Sanders, and Warren would, I think, like to see the whole thing end today.
You think it hurts them on the road?
Yeah, it absolutely does. So they might be able to talk a couple other Democrats into giving them a hand. I think Schumer's whole effort there is he'd like to drag it out farther if he could, because a large part of this, well, he may also be supporting Biden. I don't know. And that obviously advantages Biden in Iowa, but also from Schumer's perspective, and I think from a lot of the perspective in the Democrats in the House, this whole effort is an attempt to smear Trump as much as you can, make him look just as bad as you can, so that when you go into the election, you've got things you can hold against him.
He was impeached.
Yeah, and
Russia collusion.
He did this and that, and
Stormy.
I think. Thank you for the background there. The point is, I don't think the voters care one way or another. So they pulled and pushed and tried to find some string there, but I think at this point, I think it could all end today here. If they can't call any more witnesses, I would guess McConnell would move for a motion to acquit, and everybody can go home and watch
Can I ask
the
about Rand
caucuses
Paul?
and the Super Bowl. I'm sorry?
Yeah, Rand Paul.
Yeah.
Tweet from Rand Paul from yesterday, and he spoke yesterday. It was very interesting. Rand Paul, my question is about whether or not individuals who were holdovers from the Obama National Security Council and Democrat partisans conspired with Schiff staffers to plot impeaching the president before the formal House impeachment proceedings. Now, the story from the conservatives is that the whistleblower was coached by Congressman Adam Schiff's staff on how to write the complaint.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't be surprised. Adam Schiff insists that he has never met the whistleblower, doesn't know who the whistleblower is.
He said that Wednesday night, too.
I'm sorry?
He said it again Wednesday night.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to believe, but... So what's your issue here with Rand Paul?
All right. Well,
Rand
Paul wanted to say the whistleblower's name in a question on Thursday morning, and the
presiding officer,
John Roberts there, wouldn't let him.
So you're saying Rand Paul presented this as a question to be asked the prosecution attorneys or
he wanted to say it himself. Rand Paul wanted to say it, and Chief Justice Roberts censored the question.
Well, first of all, he can't say it himself. Now, these questions have to be in writing, so they have to go, I think, through the Chief Justice.
And that's what Roberts objected to, which Rand Paul objected to. Conservative critics say everybody in the whole room knows who the whistleblower is.
Oh, yeah.
And it's been in the his name's been all over the media, so this is kind of silly.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of silly things going on, Brian. Yes.
I guess so. Monday coming up, the Iowa caucus.
Yes. Well, I think as we look at it now, I think Bernie thinks he's going to win the Iowa caucus. He certainly looks pretty enthusiastic out there. And the polls show him pulling ahead in places like Texas, California, and he's way ahead in New Hampshire, according to some polls. So it does look like he's building some serious momentum, which to the Democrat power brokers has to be disconcerting, to say the least. Now, you have to understand here, out of the Iowa caucuses, these caucuses get to be pretty complicated things. They're meeting in school lunchrooms or church recreation areas or wherever they can find a spot. But you have to have at least, you have to poll at least 15% in the meeting to be able to go to a final vote in terms of support from the meeting. So what happens is people that are supporting Tulsi Gabbard or this guy Yang or some of these other people, and they know they're not going to get the 15%, so they threw their support to somebody else to try to help Bernie or Biden or somebody get the 15%. So that then lets them go into the final vote there in the caucus. And so out of the caucus then, you could end up getting the popular votes across Iowa, but you may not get, because these votes then translate into delegates to to be selected by the state convention. And I think Iowa gets, I'm thinking 45 delegates to the to the Democrat National Convention. And in contrast with California, I think California gets over 400 delegates to the convention. So it's not like this is going to sway anything one way or another when the National Convention meets, which I do believe meets in Milwaukee this year. But in any case, there are different things candidates can do. I mean, they might well end up with a popular vote across the caucuses, but not end up with most of the delegates, or it could be vice versa, or they may come from behind. For example, Klobuchar, for example, could well come up and end up fourth or so in the voting, and make a claim that she's done very, which would certainly be true. She may well do that well. So there's possibilities there. So the point I'm making here is that 3 or 4 different people can claim that somehow they've gained support out of the Iowa caucuses. So it could get kind of obscured, I guess, in that sense. But the real impotence from the Iowa caucuses then is obviously not how many delegates you're going to take to the Democrat convention, but the impetus it gives you in the sense that if you finish first and in Iowa, you can claim that you're building popular momentum across the country. And especially as somebody like Bernie, who could well end up with 25% of the support in the caucuses, which could well give him the lead. Moving into New Hampshire, I think he'll do very well in New Hampshire. And so now you got a guy who's won 2 primaries in a row. They head down to South Carolina and over to Nevada. I don't know how he'll do in South Carolina. Everybody thinks Biden has the black vote kind of tied up down there. He may have, I'm not sure. But there's a big SEIU service union vote out in Nevada. Bernie could make a pretty good appeal to those people. So I think he's got a shot here in terms of, and I think what has to happen is that the power brokers in the Democrat Party have got to do like they did last time when they undercut him running against Hillary. And somehow they've got to try to stop him. And so I don't know, Super Tuesday, where Mr. Bloomberg's planning to spend millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars, maybe they can throw up some roadblocks there. I'm not sure.
I understand he's got some gun control commercials that
I guess he has one coming on at halftime.
Yeah.
A minute commercial cost him $11 million. And it's supposed to be a bit of a tearjerker about this mother's going to go on about her son being killed, I don't know, and college student or something of that sort. I'm not sure what it's. I don't watch the halftime show anyway, so I'll miss the $1 million ad, I guess. Although it'll probably show up in other spots. You might as well get your money's worth out of it.
What are you going to do, read up on the Middle East plan?
Oh, the Middle East plan, yes.
During halftime?
Yeah, we should touch on that just a little bit there, the Middle East plan. Again, what we have here is an example of the power of incumbency. So despite the fact that they're wailing on Trump from all different directions, Trump is the president, and he has the ability to do all kinds of things in a campaign situation like this. And now he comes out with a peace plan, a clear peace plan in the Middle East. Well, not in the Middle East, but in Israel and Palestine. And he gets Netanyahu and what's his name, Gantz? Is that the guy running against
the other guy?
Yeah. They both come out and strongly support Trump's proposal, which basically gives Israel a lot more than the Palestinians get. Gives Israel U.S. backing for Israel taking over the Golan Heights, which of course they've occupied anyway, and allows Israel to claim the territories where they've had the settlements on the West Bank and such. It allows the Palestinians some area, and it makes a claim that this is a two-state resolution of the situation in Israel and Palestine. Now, the real key to it really is that the United States is backing a lot of Israel's claims. Up to this point, we've kind of been concerned about settlements in the West Bank and that sort of thing. Now we're saying, they're yours, go ahead, we'll back you on this. And so obviously Netanyahu and his opponent I think this is a good deal, which it is for Israel. I don't think there's any question about that. But the point is, what's the political fallout in the United States? And I think there are a lot of Jewish voters in some of these areas. And I think, they're big supporters of Israel. And I think what Trump has done is basically said, once again, I'm showing that I'm a supporter of Israel. And so at this point, if you're going to vote against him in the impeachment process, you better be sure you don't have a whole lot of Israeli supporters in your district. And so I think, again, Trump is able to use his position as president to build some support. And I think this will help him in the general election as well. So again, I'm not certain it's a great deal by any means, but Trump's approach here in the Middle East is we've been saying we're going to do something there, and I've been doing it. So they're making Jerusalem, moving the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem, and these sorts of things. He's just basically coming up with fairly definitive actions on in these areas, and most of them pretty clearly support Israel. So I think that's a plus for him.
Before we move on away from the Middle East topics, Congressman Tom Reed got a little heated.
Oh, did he?
In the House of Representatives yesterday on a Middle East topic. Reed was complaining because they were combining some pieces of legislation, commemorative coin bill, combined with whether or not troops should be authorized for going over to the Middle East and staying. Here's what Reed said.
Is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, I rise today in response to my good friend from Maryland who just spoke. And as one of those 27 who voted with you on that previous resolution, I stand in opposition today because this is a sham. You are using a commemorative coin bill on the floor of the House so we cannot debate the merits of this constitutional question. That is a shame. And just on that basis alone, I vote no. You're damn right we should, as members of Congress, exercise our constitutional authority, and we need to come back to this question and debate honestly and openly. When we put our men and women in harm's way, we should set aside our Democrat and Republican colors and say, let's stand as Americans.
Dr. Bob.
Sounds good to me. Again, I'm not quite aware what this deals with, an attempt to limit use of American troops over in the Middle East, or well, I'll just have to go with Congressman Reed.
Yeah,
I
that
don't
was.
want to get emotional here now, like he is. I'm a little disappointed there, but go ahead.
Next up, the Brexit.
Yes. Well, the Brexit is done, I guess. The European Parliament has voted to put an end to Great Britain's or the United Kingdom's membership in the European Union, and so that's all come to an end now. And I think, and I've made this comment numerous times before, it's just a matter of time now until the United Kingdom turns to the United States and begins to open trade lines with us to a much greater extent. So I think out of this you're going to see real pluses for both Great Britain and the United States, and I think it's going to help our economy even more. It kind of makes you wonder how much how much more robust the American economy can become. But certainly, I think a lot of the Brits are interested in getting out from under some of these European Union requirements and regulations, and gives them a lot more freedom in terms of how they go about entering into trade deals. So I think we're clearly going to see some uptick there.
On the U.S., Mexico, Canada trade deal, Congressman Tom Reed was at the White House for the signing of that, and he praised President Trump highly on that.
Well, we finished that one off too here in the last few days, and again, that doesn't make a lot of changes in the so-called NAFTA agreement, but there are some changes to American dairy farmers and such, and other areas that will again help the United States. It will help the other two countries as well, but people seem to feel that it was a good move on the part of Trump to keep this moving and modifying it. So he should get a little credit for that too, Brian.
Yeah, Congressman Tom Reed was especially excited for the dairy farmers in the district because there was apparently a lot of good things, especially in when it comes to trade between the U.S. and Canada on the trade issue.
Right. No, I think Canada had put some pretty hefty tariffs on U.S. dairy products, and this lowers them. I don't know that it removes them, but I think it definitely makes it a lot easier to trade with Canada in that area. Yep.
All right, well, we're just about out of time. Was there anything I did not bring up?
Oh, a whole host of things, Brian, but I guess we'll just have to let that go. It really is a kind of interesting. You've got some big votes on impeachment. You've got the Super Bowl, and then you've got Groundhog Day all coming up here in the next 2 or 3 days, Brian. I mean, I don't know if people will be able to handle all this.
Thanks for stopping by.
Yes, well, keep your ears to the ground there, yeah.